So let's talk about a theme that most leaders do not talk about enough. When your voice costs you the job. So let's talk about being pushed out, being sidelined, managed out, and potentially even being let go. And not because you lacked performance, but because you held the line, because you would not lower your standards, because you wouldn't play into the politics, because you believed leadership required integrity. And here's the hard truth. Sometimes the very thing that makes you a strong leader becomes a threat in a toxic environment. Now, we know that in our professional world, there are moments in which people do need to be termed, people do need to be led into a different path because they are not performing, because they're not learning. Maybe they've behaved unethically. And all of those are different things. But today we're talking about the self. What happens when this happens to you as a high performer? And remember, we are not exempt from poor leadership. This could happen to anyone. If this is your story right now, hear this clearly. You are not weak. You're not crazy. And your career is not over. But you do need clarity. So, what are the signs you are being pushed out? Well, let's talk about that. Toxic leadership rarely announces itself. It shows up quietly. Standards apply to some, but not all. Favoritism becomes the norm. Accountability becomes selective. You raise concerns, and suddenly you're negative. You notice meetings happen without you, decisions get political, and integrity gets traded for convenience. Then comes the shift, vague feedback, shift in responsibilities, unclear expectations. You might even start feeling like you're being set up for failure. So you start documenting everything. We get a little bit paranoid. When trust disappears, documentation increases. Pay attention to the patterns. Not one conflict, not one thing that it's in isolation, but patterns. It's really important that you're keen into what is being happening in a repeated form. Now, high performance does not protect you. Here is a belief we need to challenge. If I perform well, I will be safe. Boy, let me tell you, not always. If your leader feels threatened by your competence, your influence, or your moral clarity and compass, performance becomes secondary. This is not about your value. This is about their insecurity. Strong leaders build strong people. Insecure leaders eliminate perceived threats. Know the difference. The shame no one talks about. Let's talk about the part that actually hurts, which is the shame. You replay conversations, you question yourself, you wonder what you could have done differently. Your identity takes a real hit, especially if you are used to being dependable, high performing, and respected. You may not want to tell people what happened, whether it is that you ultimately decided to move on, or if you even were let go. It doesn't matter. But listen carefully. Being pushed out of a misaligned environment is not a failure. It's actually a gift. Staying in one that erodes your integrity would be a failure. So, how to know it's time to move on? There comes a moment when you must decide. Do I stay and shrink or leave and stand tall? Here are the real indicators. You're asked to compromise your ethics. You are pressured to protect misconduct. Your voice is consistently silenced. Your health is declining. You spend more time surviving than leading. And maybe the biggest one, you no longer recognize yourself. When your character starts bending to survive, that is your signal. Leaving is not quitting. Leaving is choosing alignment. So, how do we manage an unplanned exit, whether you choose it or not? Now, let's be practical. Unplanned changes, painful. There are financial concerns, family concerns, reputation concerns. This hits at the core of how many professionals begin to define themselves through their careers and professions. So here is what to do. Document your wins. Remind yourself of the amazing things that you have done. Quantify your results. Keep your professionalism intact. Just because you're making a shift and you may not be leaving in the best of terms does not mean that you put your personal well-being, your ethics, and your professionalism to question. You remain strong. you remain the leader that you know you are. So you begin to strengthen your network quietly. Seek wise counsel, not gossip. Reclaim your narrative. Instead of saying, I was fired, I was let go, I was pushed out, say, the environment no longer aligned with my leadership values. There is power in owning your story, and there is dignity in walking away without burning the bridge. What not to do? Don't go on a rant online. Don't retaliate. Do not lower your standards to keep your title. Do not isolate yourself in shame. Do not internalize the dysfunction as deficiency. You can learn from the experience without absorbing the blame that it is not yours to own. So let's talk about resilience and redirection. Here is what many leaders realize a little bit later. Being pushed out redefined them. It shaped discernment. It strengthened boundaries. It clarified purpose. Resilience is not about pretending it did not hurt. Resilience is choosing growth anyway. You can rebuild, you can reposition, and you can rise again. And at this time, you carry wisdom that cannot be taught. If you're walking through this right now, hear this. You're not finished. You are not defined by someone else's limitations. And I think this is really important to take in. People do not need to be defined by someone else's limitations, ineffectiveness, or inability to lead. You know, even strong leaders encounter insecure systems. Even those leaders that are ineffective and unequipped to manage others, right, cannot be 100% blamed for toxic environments. It is a structural issue, deep rooted within the culture of that organization. The question is not whether adversity will come. Adversity will come. The question is, who will you become because of it? You know, in the work that I do at Leader Insights, we work with leaders who refuse to compromise integrity for approval. If this message resonates with you and you're ready to lead with courage, clarity, and strength, reach out. We're here to support and empower. Because sometimes being pushed out is not a rejection, it is a redirection towards an environment where you and your standards are not a threat, but an asset. I want to thank you for listening. And again, if this resonates, reach out, send us a communication. We are constantly looking to support leaders that can grow other leaders effectively without ego so that we can continue to create ethical, committed, caring leaders. Thank you for watching, and I will see you on the next one.